Most of the farm states all like closed their doors because, you know, they don't want a bunch of random people in the middle of the pandemic. And so that really put a spanner in our works. And then we were fixing up this van, but then life kind of fell apart in other ways and we moved out to Hawaii instead. Oh, is that the GoPro? Are you recording me right now?
No.
Oh my gosh.
I have a camera like you.
You do have a camera like me.
It's Dad's camera, so I'm using it.
Are you gonna make videos like the outdoor boys?
No, you.
Oh, yeah, me. Okay, I am, yeah. Okay. So I asked my Instagram family the other day what questions they had for me for a YouTube Q&A, and I got an absolutely insane amount of responses with a lot of really fun questions. So we're gonna have to split this into a few videos. First, I'll just answer all the questions about like myself and our lifestyle, and then I'll do a whole nother video about pregnancy and birth questions, a whole nother video about like herbalism and things like that and health, and then a whole nother video maybe about like whatever other random questions. There's some about content creation and what I do for work and all that kind of stuff. So hello, I'm Ebby Moyer. My name is actually Rebecca Faith Moyer. Ebby is a nickname that I've had since childhood, and that's another story for another time. How old am I? I'm 31 years old. Crazy to say that. A lot of people ask what is my accent and where am I from. I was born and raised in Cornwall, England, which is a very rural county in the very, very tip of England, just surrounded by coast. It's very rugged and beautiful. I absolutely love it there. My parents are both from the US and they moved there before I was born to pastor a little church in the middle of nowhere. And so that's where I was raised. I lived there until I was about 20 years old. Speaking of which, what was my childhood like? It was amazing, honestly. We were all homeschooled in the middle of nowhere in England. We were known as like the crazy American homeschool family. Yeah, my dad pastored a church and that was actually a really great experience for me. It was a really like balanced and positive environment. So I was honestly spoiled, I think, a little bit in that, because as I've gotten older, my church experiences have never quite like lived up to that. It was a really great community that we had there. And we lived in the middle of like rolling hills and pastures. We spent like a lot of days just outside traipsing around and making forts and getting chased by cows and playing in streams and stuff like that. Having tons of siblings was fantastic for the most part. I'm number 7 of 8, so our family went through a lot of iterations of like different kind of family groups, you know, as the older ones left. We traveled a fair amount as kids because my dad often traveled for work, and so we would get to travel with him sometimes, and that was really, really fun. We came back and forth between the US and England and got to experience some longer stints living in the States, and that was all really fun. So I feel like I had a really diverse and love-filled childhood, and my mom was always really into health and wellness stuff, and she's really smart. She has a degree in teaching, so she's really good at learning too. And we often teased her because we'd be like, oh, Mom's read another book, like what are we gonna be eating now? But she actually landed on some really genius things. She was making kombucha way before it was cool, kefir way before anybody knew about it, in the West at least. And so I'm really thankful for that. I think that really set a foundation for me of caring for my body and just baseline knowledge of health and food and plants. What is my life story? That would take a long time to tell, and I don't think now is the time, but I might tell it at some point. It's got a lot of ups and downs, some mysterious twists and turns, some big surprises, a lot of dark days, and so far it seems a happy ending, so that's really good. How did Kendreas and I meet? We met when I moved to Kansas City to live with my parents when I was 20 years old. So when I was 18, I was kind of in a bad place, and I left my home in England to go and do like some missions work and stuff for 6 months with my brother and whatever. It was an amazing experience, really helped me out. And when I came back to England, my parents were packing up to move back to the US. I was not ready for that. I didn't want to move yet. I had a fresh new boyfriend that I thought was just the end-all be-all, so I did not want to leave with my parents and go back to the US. So, I mean, I was 18, they couldn't really stop me, but they reluctantly, like, allowed me to stay in England after they moved away. And that was a really difficult season. I stayed with some amazing people initially that I'm really thankful for, and yada yada yada, but I like slipped back into a lot of bad habits. I ended up like losing my job. I was just like stuck, and it was a really rough place to be in. And eventually my parents convinced me to move to the States, to Kansas City, to live with them for a while. And I was like, I did not want to live in Kansas. Maybe I'll move to California or Hawaii and be with one of my siblings that lives there, because that's way cooler. But eventually I was like, fine, I'll come, but I'm only staying for like 6 months. So yeah, I flew out there, I got my GED, and I started working at this garden center just down the street from my house. Andreas, my now husband, worked at their growing facility, which was like elsewhere in the city where they grew all the plants and flowers. And about 6 months and one failed relationship after I started working at that garden center, they sent me out for the winter time to work at their growing facility. And at that point I was like, I'm single, I've sworn off, guys, I'm not interested, blah 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 blah. And then yeah, I met Andreas. He was a couple years younger than me, and so I thought, so silly, Rebecca, like you cannot have a crush on him, he's such a baby. But all of us were really close friends that worked there. We all became really close really fast, and we all went out to a concert one night. Andre and I hit it off, and we were dancing together and whatever else, and then, you know, some flirting in the greenhouse, a few chats in his car after work. I was like, are we dating? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. Here we are 10 years later. Dang. Married, 2 kids. Has it been 10 years? Yeah, we've now been married 5 years. That's wild. If I were to fill a swimming pool with anything but water, what would it be? My first instinct is to say Jello, but that also sounds terrifying and deadly. But I had this movie when I was a kid called Patch Adams with Robin Williams in it, and at one point they fill a pool with noodles, like spaghetti noodles, to fulfill an old woman's like dying wish. And that looked epic, so I'm gonna say noodles. There's actually a lot of questions about living in Hawaii. What's it like? How do we afford it? Well, I think what's it like varies depending on where you are, because every island is different and all the different parts of each island is different. We live in a rural part of a rural island. It's very rugged where we live and not very developed at all. So there's some really tough people doing amazing things to regenerate or generate, I guess, land from the lava rock. And it's really beautiful to see. And it's definitely very different than you would imagine when you think of like a Hawaii vacation. There's so many rewarding things about living here because it is beautiful, and there's amazing weather all year round, and so you can get some amazing produce and fruit all year round, and you can kind of explore and adventure a lot. But it challenges you. There's a lot of challenges about living here. There's challenges about living in the middle of the ocean. Financially, there are challenges. So like the question of how do we afford it? We work really hard. A couple of years just like working so hard and barely making enough. And we make frugal choices, so we pick and choose what we're going to spend money on. Like we share a car, and it's a little simple car. We moved an hour away from town to a place where housing prices were like exponentially cheaper. It's a little bit more inconvenient. We try and buy things locally at like local markets and stuff, and then just do like a big weekly shop when we do a trip to town. I think no matter where you live and no matter what you want, what are your priorities? I have like 2 pairs of shoes. So does Dre, and he would love to have a big old truck and whatever, but he just doesn't, and the gas on that would be crazy. We spend a lot of our money on groceries, like because we have a really high priority for our food and the health of our food, and groceries here are really expensive, and then less money on car payments and on rent. Someone asked if we've considered van life, and we have actually. In 2020, that's what we were kind of considering. We got a van and we were starting to fix it up, and we wanted to go and do farm stays. Most of the farm stays all like closed their doors because, you know, they don't want a bunch of random people in the middle of the pandemic. And so that really put a spanner in our works. And then we were fixing up this van, but then life kind of fell apart in other ways, and we moved out to Hawaii instead. Oh, is that the GoPro? Are you recording me right now?
No.
Oh my god.
I have a camera like you.
You do have a camera like me. So van life is something that we still consider, but it's a different thing to consider it with 2 kids. I think I would really like to spend a season, maybe like a summer, van lifing around Europe or something. That is a huge dream of mine. If anybody has a van that they want to lend us in Europe and you want to come stay in our house in Hawaii, let me know. What tree would I be and why? Weeping willow comes to mind, probably because I just love that tree, but also like they're strong, but they're a little bit sappy, you know, like they're kind of emo, but they're also cute. And I'm pretty sure that their bark is medicinal. I don't know if it's the weeping willow or just the like regular kind of willow, but let's say it is. And that's pretty dope. Okay, a few more questions here. Are you okay? Okay, I was asked about 5 life-changing books. I have to say that the most life-changing book I've ever read was the Bible. And I know, but before you just discount that answer, I've gone back and forth with that book a lot and just always come back to finding it to be the most honest and pure source of so much deep, beautiful, and healing knowledge. And so many of the other things that we have come to know philosophically, spiritually, even scientifically, you can see rooted there. I think religious and philosophical texts objectively are really beautiful and fascinating to read, even if you don't follow that religion. And the Bible is super historical too, so it's really, really cool book. The first book I ever read that I recall to be super life-changing was a book called The Irresistible Revolution by Shane Claiborne. And this is also in the kind of faith sphere, but it's by this man named Shane who very counterculturally at the time saw Jesus as a man that was of the people and that was very poor, lowly, and homeless essentially. And Shane decided to take that very much upon his life practically and put himself in that position, and ended up really loving on and ministering to and uplifting homeless and the poor. He now has like a whole like neighborhood ministry thing based in Philadelphia with like community gardens and all kinds of stuff like that, stepping out of the modern consumerist culture, and especially how religion has become very intertwined with that in the West, and kind of dismantling that, taking a more humble route. And that was absolutely life-changing to me, and I wanted to just travel the earth barefoot and love people after reading that book. Second life-changing book for me was this one right here, The Woman Code by Elisa Vitti, or Elisa Vitti. She is a woman who was in medical school, I believe, when she realized that she had endometriosis and a slew of like hormone-related health issues, and she bounced around from doctor to doctor and trying all kinds of different holistic therapies and things, trying to find a cure for herself, and then eventually came to the conclusion that she could eat food to support her hormones on a monthly cycle to help bring them back to the place that they should be. And so she created cycle syncing, which is like syncing your food, your diet, and your lifestyle to your hormones as they cycle throughout the month. She has other books, but this is, I think, her most like standard one that kind of explains everything. It was huge in helping me heal from PMDD, which is where just before your cycle, it's like PMS on absolute steroids. It's horrible. And I just had like horrific periods where I would just be absolutely crippled, and cycle syncing changed my life. Another life-changing book is The Artist's Way. I haven't personally finished this book because it's really a difficult program to follow, but I've read through a lot of it and it is absolutely life-changing. The view of seeing yourself as a creative person, no matter who you are, and finding and reigniting that creativity in yourself without judgment, and allowing that to unlock you in areas that you feel stuck. The world says that this is a life-changing book. It's so well respected, and I know so many people who have actually followed and finished The Artist's Way with really great results, and I'm still trying. I'm still attempting. A fourth book is The Four Agreements. It's by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's a small book, it's short, you could probably read it in a day or two if you wanted to, but it's these 4 agreements that you make with yourself, and if you just make them as like law and stick to them, it will change your whole like outlook on life. And the 5th book is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, not just because I share a name with the title, just truly a masterpiece of writing. It's a fiction book, written so beautifully, descriptive, gorgeous. There's twists and turns, there's romance, there's heartbreak, there's intrigue, there's mystery. It's incredible. It's also based in Cornwall, which is where I grew up. Are there things that I wish I did before having kids? I mean, yeah, but I didn't do them. And so there's a reason for them, because I didn't have kids really early on in life. I wish that I had traveled a lot more, but I did travel a lot. I had plenty of fun. I did plenty of partying. I wasted plenty of money. I think I mostly wish that I had come to a more stable place within myself, that I had gotten more solid habits and disciplines in place. I was very, very much at a whim to my desires, my so-called needs. And I think that when you live a lifestyle for a long time that involves a lot of substances, partying, events, whatever, that's basically very self-serving, you kind of learn a habit of only doing things that feel good. And the more you allow that to take over in your life, the less positive the outcomes are. And then something happens, like you have a kid and you're like, oh crap, I can't only do things that make me feel good anymore. And I have to somehow learn to feel good when doing things that are uncomfortable. That was just a really steep learning curve for me. Just like self-discipline, learning how to love my life even with the mundane. Like I would get like, I had a period in my life before having kids when mundane tasks like brushing my teeth every day literally brought me to tears. I was depressed anyway. I was in a really rough place, but I was like, I can't believe that I have to brush my teeth twice a day every day for the rest of my life. How human is that? It's horrible. Because I just wanted to be outside of myself, essentially. I was seeking dopamine like constantly. I wish that I had found more gratification in hard things and in self-discipline, and like, yeah, figured out how to keep my house clean before having kids, because I've had to figure it out since having kids, and that's a lot harder. 2 more questions. Did I always want to be a mama? No. I didn't. I really loved kids when I was little, but also when I was little, I always said that I never wanted to grow up. I never wanted to leave my parents, which changed real quick when I was a teenager. Love you, mom and dad. Now I wish I could go back and be with them. Anyways, and then as I got older, I just didn't want the responsibility of it. And then at some point, I also began to believe a narrative that I just wasn't cut out for it. Like that I didn't have motherly instincts. And I think I felt very disconnected from my feminine self. And because I thought feminine somehow equated to like weakness or subservience and all these things, not because it's what I had seen. I had a very strong mom and she was not subservient at all, but somehow for me, it felt like that's what it had to be. And I was like, I just don't fit into that. Maybe also like beautiful and soft, and I didn't feel beautiful and soft. So I really felt not only that like I didn't want kids, but like I wasn't cut out for having kids. Actually, right before I got pregnant with my first, I really just like didn't know how to interact with life at all anymore. I was in a really, really bad place. And honestly, having him saved me in so many ways. Not him himself, but the kick up the butt that I got when I got pregnant and decided that like I can't continue these negative patterns in my life, and I can't pass that on to somebody else, like changed me, and I'm so thankful for it. And now it's challenging being a mom often, especially because it's not something that I was like mentally preparing for like years and years, but it feels right and I feel capable and good being a mom. I mean, look. And now people left, right, and center tell me that I was just created to be a mom and that I look so natural at it, so. Lastly, was a spiritual lesson that changed my life. But I guess there's 2. One that like, and this is very generic, but it's not, but everything is all connected. Like that I am connected to you and you're connected to them, and we're all connected together and connected to the earth and connected to the thousands of years before and the people in the future and the things that we can't see and understand, and like it all flows together. You can't just like separate yourself from the world around you and think that your actions don't have consequences on them or that the world around you doesn't affect you. The other one was the idea that everybody has a major weakness or something that they think is a weakness, but actually there's a sort of redeemed or enlightened version of that is in fact their strength, and that I think that there are good and evil forces at work in the world, like dark and light, and I think that the darker forces would like you to believe that these negative aspects of yourself are who you are, but actually it's a twisted version of who you were actually created to be. So for instance, I believed for many, many years that I was rebellious, like at a core, and it never quite sat right with me because I was like, I don't want to be rebellious. I'm not trying to be rebellious, but everything I'm doing seems to be rebellious, and I keep being told that I'm rebellious. At a certain point in my life, through some different experiences, I came to the realization that I was made to be revolutionary, and that I was actually made to rebel against things that were unjust, and that I was made to stand out, but for good reasons, you know? So this thing that was meant to be a beautiful part of my spirit that stands up for injustice, that isn't satisfied with taking things at face value and isn't satisfied just with the status quo and wants to dig deeper and question everything, and that's a positive aspect of my nature, had been twisted through experiences that I'd had, and through the world and through forces of darkness to make me believe that I was just a rebel, like rebellious, and that's something bad, and that kind of keeps you from pursuing actually this beautiful higher part of yourself. And that if we are all able to pursue who we truly are and who are truly made to be, like that is when magic happens. That's when earth changers come about, and that's when we have like true power over our environment. And I think that sometimes we're very successfully tricked out of that power. Anyways, I'm done. That was a lot. I don't know how long this was. This is supposed to be long form. Maybe that was too long form. I'll be back with a Q&A about pregnancy and baby stuff, and another one about health and herbs and things like that. Thanks for all the questions. That was really fun. It felt like a little blast from my very own past that I haven't had in a long time. So I hope you're having a great day.